particularly because there was that such an unfortunate happening in Stanga, my Lord. Thank you. Thank you. And our thoughts are with those devotees, particularly those from here, but just with all of them, having to be subjected to this whole situation. What can you say? Like I said last night, those of you who were there, I think the great majority of you were there, this is the material world. And of course, generally people in this world, they have aspirations of living happily and, everything being nice and all that sort of thing, but they just lose sight of the fact that it is the material world. And as such, well, you remember the 4 factors that we mentioned right at the beginning? I think you must remember. In Sanskrit, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, birth, death, old age, and disease. These are just these sort of foundational factors of reality here in this material world. And when we hear that someone has died, or in this case I believe 7 people, then of course we're shocked. But at the same time we have to bear in mind that's just how this world works, and you just can't escape it. If it's not in some sort of dramatic and drastic way, like what happened with those people in Stanga. If it's not like that, it's just, in some other way, maybe someone just passes away in their sleep. That's a kind of relatively peaceful way to meet death. But one way or another, when you're dead, you're dead. Or really speaking, from the Krishna conscious point of view, when your body has died, then your body has died. And how it happened, in a sense, doesn't really matter so much. It's just now the fact is that your body has died. And for ordinary people who are not devotees, they die in one situation or another, and then depending on how they lived, and gosh, people live in all different types of ways. Some are relatively pious, and then there's all different gradations, and some of them are just terrible people, horrific people. So as one lives, as one has lived, then one will go to a next situation somehow or other. That's just, like the most basic fact of life, really, practically. So in this regard, and just in regard to life in general, I'm going to read a verse, a very famous and prominent verse from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita as it is translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I'm going to read the third chapter I'm going to read from the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is titled Karma Yoga. And I'm going to read verse 9, which is a very famous verse. And before I do that, some of you may not have been there last night, but I want to introduce to you, sitting here just on my right, is Madana-mohan Prabhu. Of course, those who were there last night, many of you were, and you heard what he had to say, and it was great, wasn't it? It was just really nice, extremely nice, because he is extremely nice. He's a great devotee, and he's been a devotee many years. How many years now? From 91. From 91. 91. Now it's 2026, so it's 35 years. That's, not a short period of time. So I'll read this verse, Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, verse 9, and say some words, and then I will hand over to Madana-mohan Prabhu, who will also say some words, and hopefully he'll sit in the chair across on the other side there. Right, so please just repeat after me to start off with. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Just let me take a little sip of water. Right. So Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose deity, of course, is just there on my left. And it's chapter 3, Karma Yoga, verse 9. And Lord Krishna says, Yagyartat karmanon yatra lokayan karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Translation: work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Let me read Srila Prabhupada's purport. Since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin гаудия-вайшнавизм. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed duties or directly serves Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. And Prabhupada quotes a verse from Vishnu Purana, 3rd canto, chapter 8, verse 9. Vanashrama charavata purushena parapuman Vishnur aradyate. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage, for both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work. And in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. Yes, let me read the verse again. So it's Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, verse 9. Yagyartat karmanon yatra lokayam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarane Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So devotees, thank you again for coming. It's really very nice to be in your company again. Last night was also very nice, and we were here, I forget exactly the last time. We were here one time after Rath Yatra, isn't it? There was Rath Yatra, we were here, And I think one time after Rath Yatra, and now we're here now. So yes, Richards Bay, Hari Prabhu, Hari Prasad, and I were talking just before we started a little while ago, and we were talking a little bit about how we, I think it was the year 2000, I'm pretty sure, maybe it was 2001, when there was no building here, there was just grass. And we had a tent campaign. You remember that? Yes. Just sort of right here, or more or less right here. And it was really nice. It was just really nice. There was at least 100 people came every evening. I think it was for 3 evenings, if I remember correctly, 3 or 4 maybe. But every night, yes, 100 people, 120 would come. It was just a great success. And I could see then that if we do something like this, and if we do it nicely, and then if we utilize it nicely, and educate people in Krishna consciousness and have nice, attractive programs so that people feel, oh, this is just really, this is wonderful, then so many people will become involved. This is what happens all over the world, actually. Here, you know, you're all from Hindu backgrounds, I think. But in other parts of the world, well, like Russia, where Madana-mohan Prabhu is from, and where Acharyavan Prabhu is from, except for a bit in Moscow, and not that many, really, just some business people in Moscow, and a few in St. Petersburg, and a few students in a couple of cities around, just a couple of cities around the country. Don't get any Indian people, no. You just don't get them. 0. And when I was going there every year for 4 months, for what, about 25 years, 26 years. Yeah, so I saw it. But in practically every city in the country, there's a temple and a group of devotees, in some cases some hundreds of devotees, in some cases a smaller group, because Krishna consciousness is like that when it's presented nicely, then people, from whatever their background is, they become interested and they come along and they get involved. Even, we have a problem in some countries, like Malaysia, to some degree Indonesia, and what to speak of Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, these Muslim places. Some Muslim people decide that they find Krishna consciousness is very interesting, and they want to come along and, just do what we're all doing. But in those countries, it's illegal. Oh yeah, it's extremely illegal, actually. It's so illegal you wouldn't believe it, actually. So we have to be careful if these people start coming and taking an interest, because they're doing something illegal and so are we. Anyway, what can you do? We got to carry on when people are interested. So today, Chitrasakhi Devi Dasi, who's our leader here, she asked us to say something along the lines of, it's sort of like, you could say, how to balance things in your life. Balance, have Krishna consciousness there, because Krishna consciousness is just so nice. You could almost say it makes life in this material world worth living. But at the same time, you got to work. And at the same time, the vast majority of people, and even all the people in most places, other than the very young ones, you have a family, and you've got to look after them. And, you know, these things take time and effort, energy, and, you know, you've got to think about how to carry out your duties and so on. So how to balance all of that so that you don't... Well, Prabhupada, let me just make one point. Prabhupada says that, I think it's in the purport of Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 3. Anyway, it's somewhere around there. Srila Prabhupada says, a devotee works to live, but the devotee does not live to work. Yes, we are not here, I mean, in this human form of life, to become workaholics and just, you know, spend our complete, the time we're awake during the day, just dedicate the whole time to working and trying to make some money. You know, this may sound a little silly or cheeky or something like that, but you know what, we advise devotees, and they usually laugh. Either they laugh or they're shocked. But actually we're serious when we propose this or suggest this. Try to find some type of work, or if not work, maybe business, but some way of earning some income where you work as little as possible, but you earn as much as possible. How does that sound? Good formula. And you know, actually, I know a few devotees who have done that. Yeah, they have families and a house which they own, and maybe they're still paying it off, and, you know, a motor car, or maybe a couple of motor cars and a couple of children, 2, maybe 3, or sometimes 4. And the husband doesn't work much. He doesn't work 6 days a week, definitely doesn't work 7 days a week, doesn't work 6 days a week, he doesn't work 5 days a week, he doesn't even work 4 days a week. Some of these men, they work maybe 3 days a week, and because, you know, they've structured things in their lives very intelligently, in say 3 days in a week, they earn enough to live very nicely. Not bad at all. Oh yes, really not bad at all. So like I said, well, some of you laughed. At least no one fainted when they heard that. Yeah, but so it can be done, and really in a sense it should be done. You know, look at me. I retired, I worked, I worked. I left school in New Zealand, getting the equivalent of matric. In New Zealand, I don't know about now, but in those days it was called University Entrance, UE. So I got my UE, I had just turned 17. And then I worked. I wanted to be a writer. So my father actually, he was a businessman, he knew so many people. He arranged for me to have a job on the second biggest newspaper in the country as a journalist. So there I was, working as a journalist. That was, what was it? Gee whiz, 1968. 1968 till 1972, kind of. Yeah, and then, you know what I did in 1972? Do you know what I did? See what you think of this. I retired. And I'm not joking, actually. I retired. And I have not worked in the sort of classical or regular sense of a job where you're paid a wage, that sort of the usual thing. I have not worked like that since, it was sometime in 1972. And, look, I'm still alive. I have not starved to death yet. In fact, the opposite is the case. There's too much prasadam. Oh yeah, got to watch your cholesterol level and so on. But it's true, actually. I haven't worked in the regular sense. So yeah, I mean, these things can actually be done. But, let's come down to sort of the normal level, because I am a bit, shall I say, abnormal? I'm not just one of your regular run-of-the-mill fellows. But for people who are more just, general type of people, you can do it. If, first of all, what shall I say? Well, first of all, yes, why not? First of all, we have to, as devotees, we have to be devotees. There's a certain perspective as devotees who work. There's a certain perspective on ourselves that we should have. That is, that you may be whatever you may be. What do you do?
I work as an engineer.
You're an engineer. So you're an engineer. So as someone who's working as an engineer, you could have a perspective on yourself that I am an engineer who is involved in Krishna consciousness. That's a perspective of identity. I am an engineer, that's what I am, but I'm a devotee, shall we say. But the other perspective, which is what we really encourage, is that I am a devotee. But in order to maintain myself and, my responsibilities, my family, I work as an engineer. You get the idea? So your sort of basic identity is, I am a devotee. But I have a family, because, the great majority of people have families. So I have a family, have to maintain them, So I work. I'm a devotee, but to maintain that responsibility, as a devotee, I work as an engineer. You get the idea, not that I'm an engineer, but, you know, like if you're really like a practicing devotee, I'm an engineer, but every day I chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna. Every day I follow the regulative principles. And, you know, when there's any festival or something, I go along, and on Sundays I come to the temple. Yeah, you get the idea that the perspective is, I'm a devotee, that's what I am. The basic reality of who I am and what I am. But because I have a family, Krishna sent, somehow by Krishna's arrangement, I ended up with a family. So I have to maintain them, of course. I can't just sort of say, well, look, I'm a devotee, so let them take care of themselves. So, you know, this is helpful to have that perspective, and then to really work on our Krishna consciousness. I was talking to, what's your name again? Nikash Prabhu, just before we started, and I asked him how many rounds he chants, and I won't tell you what his answer was. It wasn't 16, but anyway, he chants regularly, which is good. But then I tried to emphasize a bit gently, but you know, a little bit to make things clear that if you chant 16 rounds a day, that will help you deal with your life in the broadest sense, including dealing with your family and dealing with your work situation. It'll really help, because that spiritual sound vibration, Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It has great power. And it's only highly beneficial power. And what that power does, it cleans out the sort of the stuff which gets into your mind, you know, in life, being exposed to work and the people at work, and just advertising and being aware what goes on in this world, being aware of Mr. Trump, for example. But it acts as a cleansing. It has a cleansing effect on one's thought patterns, on one's mind, one's intelligence, one's consciousness. Yeah, it makes these things cleaner, clearer, and stronger, so that when you're at work and the boss wants to, you know, get you to work more or whatever it may be, but you'll be able to deal with it more easily and more effectively. So, I mean, along with reawakening your eternal relationship with Krishna, which is, of course, the ultimate and main thing, but it has these effects also. So, and we give the example, here's an example we give, and I think it's a pretty good example. If you have to drive from here, even say just to Durban, it's not so far, but you know, it's a bit of a drive, couple of hours or something. So when you drive from here to Durban, you have to have at least a certain minimum amount of petrol to get there without running out. If you have less than the minimum amount you need, then you run out on the road, of course. And I don't know how things are around this part of the world so much, but I know our highways have very bad reputations for sometimes people getting hijacked. I won't ask if any of you have been hijacked, but I know plenty of devotees who have been hijacked. Yeah. In fact, I read once, some years ago, that what is the definition of someone in South Africa, a South African, who is an optimist about South Africa? And the answer was, someone who has not been hijacked yet. Anyway, forgive I have this sense of humor, my gosh. I should do something about it. Yes, anyway, but I mean, who wants to run out sort of in the middle of nowhere, even if there's no hijackers around? Who wants to just run out of petrol, and what you're going to do? Go and get petrol, leave someone in the car to make sure it's safe, or, I mean, it's just a very problematic situation. So you need at least the minimum amount. And if you have less than the minimum amount to get there, it's really a problem. So similarly, the idea is to get through the day in like a nice, clear-headed, Krishna-conscious state of mind, right through till the evening, from the morning. Prabhupada, who was in capital letters, the expert on how to be Krishna conscious and how to be Krishna conscious in ways that it really works for you. Srila Prabhupada said that, didn't just say, but he really specified clearly, you must chant at least 16 rounds a day. More, you can do more, and it'll just help more. But at least 16 rounds, it'll get you through the day if you do it nicely. It'll get you through the day in a clear-headed state of mind. Yeah. And sort of peaceful and able to deal with at least the regular things that crop up during the course of a day at work, or, in whatever situation you find yourself in. So, this is very important because it's like the food for our consciousness. I think we all know, like, Janmashtami is coming up, right? We're at the end of April. Janmashtami is, what is it, August or September? It's August, is it? Okay. So, it's 3 or 4 months away, something like that. And our practices, we don't eat anything, nothing, till midnight. Yeah, I mean, unless you're diabetic or something like that, where you have to keep some food there in your system. But otherwise, for any sort of a person who has normal health, we fast right through till midnight, or then, we have arati at midnight, so it ends up being like 12:30 or even 1 o'clock before we have something to eat. And I assume you've done it before, and you know that by maybe 2 in the afternoon, 3, maybe 4, you sort of start running out of steam a bit. Because our bodies, they're used. You eat breakfast, then you have lunch sometime midday or very early afternoon, and it keeps you going. And then in the evening you have something else. So yeah, but now we don't eat anything for breakfast, nothing for lunch, and nothing as a supper or evening meal. So your body feels it. One devotee who was present in the first Krishna Janmashtami festival in ISKCON in America told us what the experience was like. None of them had ever fasted, I mean in the sense of not eating anything for a whole day before. But Prabhupada told them that yes, today is Krishna Janmashtami, it's Krishna's birthday, so we are going to fast. And all the devotees, they're all just young men, young women, 20, 25 years old. So they just said, oh, okay. But then, they started running out of steam in the course of the afternoon at least. Then Prabhupada took them into the temple room in 26 2nd Avenue, our first temple in ISKCON. It's in New York, and we still have it. And Prabhupada said, yes, come on, come in, sit down. I will read Srimad Bhagavatam to you. So he did, from like maybe 7 o'clock or something, till midnight. And by that time, talk about running out of steam. They had all run out. And they were just shocked. And this one devotee who was explaining, he said that in the temple room, we had one of the original quartz clocks, which go tick, tick, tick. You see, each second is one tick. Otherwise, you have the old clocks, the automatic ones. The hand just moves around, but this now goes tick, tick, tick. So he said he was, for about 3 hours, he was meditating deeply on the second hand of the clock as it was going tick, tick, tick. And as far as he could tell, it was going tick and stopping. And then after a while, after some time, it went tick again. As far as he was concerned, that's what was happening. Time had slowed down, like quite drastically. It was going like at 1/10 the speed that it normally does. And yeah, but he survived. He felt like that. When midnight came and prasadam was served, he actually felt, I survived. I'm still alive. Oh, yes. So anyway, the thing is, when it comes to keeping our mind together, our consciousness together and really focused and working nicely, then just like the body has to have food in order to run nicely, so the consciousness, our food is, in that sense, is the chanting. Yeah. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Please bear that in mind. I know some of you are chanting 16 rounds. I know some of you are not. And the rest of you, well, anyway, I'm not sure. You know. But I can just say it's extremely beneficial is just so extremely beneficial in all respects. In all respects. Oh yeah. So there you go. That will help you. That will just help you in general, your own feelings, how you're doing in life. It'll help you with your family dealings. Will help you with your work situation and the boss and everything, because you'll be more focused, you'll be more on the ball, actually. So, okay, so that's very important. I want you to really think about that, and as much as you're able, apply it. And then the next thing is about time. And it's connected. It's not like just some other thing, but it's very closely connected with what I've just been saying. In Bhagavad Gita, what verse is it? Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravriddha. Which one? 10th chapter? Yes, it's the 10th chapter, something. Here, look, I'll just bear with me for a sec, and I will look it up. Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravriddha. Time I am, the destroyer of the worlds, and I have come to engage everyone. Let's see. Time. Oops. Are we sure it's the 10th chapter? I'm pretty sure it is. Where is it? 11, right, yeah. It's 11. 32, yeah. 32, yes, that's it. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravriddho, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, means Arjuna and his brothers, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. So, but anyway, the particular point I'm focusing on is Krishna says, Kalosmi. Yeah, which means kalo, kalaha, and then asmi, when the kalaha means the A of asmi, which means I am, then the kalaha becomes kalo. Am I right? He's a Sanskrit scholar, actually. It's a fact. Did I get it right? I got it right, yeah. Kalaha asmi. Time I am. So time, in this world, time is a very, very special thing, because it's sort of like not a form, but a manifestation of God, of the Supreme Lord. Yes. It's a manifestation of Him. It's one of His principal energies. You know, when in the beginning of creation, if you get a chance to read Brahma Samhita, then Lord Brahma, who's speaking, he explains how at the beginning of creation, Lord Mahavishnu glances over the material energy which is just sitting there. It's not active yet, like it's active now. And all the living entities have been withdrawn from it. There's no living entities in the material world or material nature. They're all in the body of Mahavishnu. So the first thing that he does, Lord Mahavishnu, he glances over that sort of inert material nature. And that glance, there's certain things in the glance. One of them is what's called the Icha Shakti, means the Shakti, the energy of the Lord's desire. Icha meaning desire. But another energy which is there is the Kala Shakti, the energy of time. And another thing is us. We are injected into the material nature. Yeah. So along with the energy of time, along with the energy of the Lord's desire. And when that time energy enters the material world, it stimulates the material energy. Material energy divides up into the different elements: earth, water, fire, and so on. And the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, they now come out from being all sort of just mixed up with the material nature. And so the material world starts again. And our karma, when time contacts our karma, because our karma is sort of like a cocoon which we're in at that time, then time stimulates our karma, and then we start getting karmic reactions, and so we become active, all under the influence of time. So time is very special. And you know, one thing that Prabhupada said, and actually it comes from Chanakya Pandit. I don't know if you're familiar at all with Chanakya Pandit. He was back a few hundred years. He was a prime minister of the king Chandragupta. Chandragupta, right? Yeah, Chandragupta. And he was an extremely wise man in terms of sort of worldly life. Yes, so he said, one of the things which he said about this world, which Prabhupada agreed with and himself would say from time to time, is that if anyone wastes even 1 second, forget about 1 day, forget about 1 hour, forget about 1 minute, just 1 second, you cannot buy it back, even if you have all the money. Forget about Mr. Musk and then add Bill Gates to him, and whoever else all the rich people are. You put them all together and all their money together, which is probably trillions of dollars actually. You cannot buy back 1 second if you've lost it. So, if you read Nectar of Devotion, it was Nikash, wasn't it? You've started to read Nectar of Devotion, right? If you read chapter 18, there's a list of symptoms of a highly advanced devotee, very advanced on the level of bhava, practically on the level of pure love of God. So either the first or the second quality is never wastes any time. A devotee, advanced devotee, never wastes any time. Yes. And there's actually a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and, if you have heard of, if you remember, George Harrison from the Beatles, you know, the famous musicians of 50, 60 years ago. There's a conversation between the two of them in which they talk about sleeping. And Prabhupada says to George Harrison, Prabhupada says, you know, every day after lunch, I take a little nap, a short nap. Prabhupada said that I call it a snap. It's a short nap, it's a snap. And Prabhupada said, when I lie down, I think, here I go, wasting my time again. Yeah. Krishna. Anyway, my point now is, we as devotees, and devotees who are working and got a family and dealing, you know, with life in those terms, we need to do something. It's very ordinary time management. It's just about the most ordinary thing that, you know, these management guru type people, that they talk about. You got to use your time properly. Time management. And you'd be surprised if you do it. Like, get a sheet of paper and put, you know, I get up at whatever the time is, and then, you know, an hour later I do this, an hour later I do that, another hour later I do something else, and then I go to work, and at work I do this, and I do this at specific times. It really helps to order your life and order your thinking. Of course, sometimes you can't stick to the schedule. But if you can, as much as possible, you'll find, you know what you'll find? Suddenly, you've got more time. And you'll be thinking, wow, how did that happen? I've got an extra hour now. But like yesterday, before I started doing this, I didn't have any spare time. Now I've got an extra hour. It's because we have, not just we, but just people have this kind of tendency to sort of become a bit lazy every now and then, and in this way waste time. Do something we don't need to do. Yeah, check the news to see what wonderful things Mr. Trump is doing. Anyway, how about Cyril Ramaphosa in his dealings with, what's the guy's name from EFF? Oh my God. Yeah, anyway, you know what I mean, don't you? So yeah, I'm suggesting that you start doing some time management. And I promise you, you'll find you have more time. Once you get a little used to it, at least, you'll find that time just sort of appears. You got to discipline yourself a bit and not sort of space out and, you know, start daydreaming. But if you do this nicely, you'll find you get more time. And this time is so extremely valuable, incredibly valuable. Prabhupada, in that conversation with George Harrison, one of the two of them says that Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, used not to sleep much at all. Particularly, you know, when he was the big famous sort of politician, spiritual politician, whatever you'd call him. And he's moving around constantly. He would he traveled by train, and he'd just sit there and doze off for a while. And one of them, it may have been George Harrison, said that Napoleon, the famous one, he also didn't sleep. When he was traveling on his horse, he would just sort of lean across the neck of his horse and doze off for a little while, because they appreciated the value of time. I mean, of course, they're kind of materialistic, particularly Napoleon. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to leave that with you. It's up to you. You do it to some degree. You don't do it, I leave it up to you. But, you know, if you do these two things, really get your Krishna consciousness together, particularly your chanting, and then get your time management together and work at it, because you have to work at it, you'll see that your life becomes much more under your control. Yeah. And you're able to do much more of what you want to do and do it better. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, we have some time.
No, Maharaj, we don't have
some time.
No.
We have some time. Just see how wonderful. So we can hear. I mean, I think we've got half an hour. Do we have? It's 12:34.
I think it's supposed to end at 12:30, Maharaj.
Well, I have to hear you, because otherwise I can't write a glowing report. So please, come sit up here and speak for a little while. See, they're clapping because you're coming up to speak.
I sit here, Maharaj, next to you, because I don't want to distract attention from you by sitting over there.
But see, then they, important devotees, look,
oh, they can
that's
see.
the ladies. They are running the show, actually.
Is it okay? Is it okay from here? So you can see Maharaj. I don't want to distract attention from Maharaj by sitting over there. I can just hold it. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Is it on? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
This one definitely works.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. It doesn't work, does it? Okay. Hare Krishna. Does this one work? Can you hear me? Wow, what a class that Maharaj has just delivered, full of.
Should I do it somehow?
Huh?
Should I do it somehow?
You want
No, but it's audible, right? The microphone. The microphone. Oh, it's feeding. It's feeding. I can just take that micro. I can just give me the.
if the cable will reach.
Hare Krishna. What a class. How many of you have gleaned from Maharaj's class some very practical, inspiring topics or points that you could take away from this afternoon's discussion and apply it to your lives? Well, my another hand is occupied with the microphone, but I can raise two hands. One for each topic, main emphasis that Maharaj presented. one of them was, actually he presented more than two very important points, and the first one that I really focused on and thought about it as Maharaj was explaining it was about us having proper identity as devotees. The formula that he gave is we should think ourselves to be devotees who do things and have a job or have a profession, rather than the other way around, being engineers or managers or office workers or whatever you name it, or businessmen, who also sometimes at their leisure time like to be devotees. And then the second point Maharaj emphasized was about the importance and efficacy of chanting. That chanting Maharaj has compared to food for consciousness, which is important to pull us through the day in a proper state of clarity, purity, and happiness, which is very important. Because happiness, as Maharaj said, you go to work and you remain Krishna conscious if you do these basic foundational spiritual activities before doing anything else. That's the formula. Sometimes when devotees ask me about the best approach to finding balance in life, as Mataji Chitra Sakhi said that today's topic needs to be some along the lines of balance, finding balance in life, then the best formula I can come up with speaking with them is, again, along the lines of what Maharaj has just explained. I usually advise devotees, following Srila Prabhupada's advice, try to do your chanting before doing anything else. I don't tell devotees when they should go to bed, when they should get up, but if that formula as a pivot in one's life, this the foundational principle, is kept doing, chanting your rounds, however many rounds we have in consultation with our spiritual master or our mentors or devotees who we trust, have set for ourselves as a manageable minimum. Ideally 16 and more, as Maharaj explained, but sometimes devotees start from a certain number of rounds up. And the trick is not to go down, and if we miss one round of the quota we have set for ourselves for now, if we miss 1 or 2 rounds, we have to make up for them the next day. That demonstrates the seriousness of our intentions to Krishna and to the spiritual master and devotees, and working up from that level. So if we do that, if we chant that number of rounds every day before doing anything else, then it purifies and spiritualizes the entire day. And of course, Srila Prabhupada has said for us, but actually the background of that discussion he had with, actually it was with Mukunda Prabhu at that time. It was in San Francisco when Srila Prabhupada. He and a few more devotees were some of the first devotees who received initiation from Prabhupada. After that Janmashtami that Srila Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj has just described, when those who survived after the Janmashtami came the next day, they received initiation from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told them once, okay, tomorrow we'll have tomorrow, a few days from now, he will have initiation. And Mukunda was one of them. And they all took their vows to chant a minimum of 16 rounds on beads. And then sometime later, a few months later, Srila Prabhupada was with Mukunda in San Francisco. And then he asked him, so Mukunda, do you chant your 64 rounds every day? And Mukunda Maharaj, now he remembers, he was shocked to such an extent that he couldn't even muster up words to reply to Srila Prabhupada. He didn't know what to say because it sounded so outrageously impossible. 64 rounds. It takes about, 8 hours? And then Prabhupada understood and he said, okay, 32 rounds every day. And Mukunda And we should be very grateful to him for that. He remained silent. Prabhupada said 25. He remained silent again, and then Prabhupada said, okay, 16, but no less. And that's the minimum no one will be able to change in ISKCON. That's the outside story, but the background, as Srila Prabhupada explains himself, the behind the doors, behind the scenes story kind of thing, is that such a great Acharya, and Srila Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj made an emphasis when he described Prabhupada. He said he is the capital, all capital letters, the one who is expert in making spiritual life for us practicable and effective. Why? Because of his connection with Krishna, direct connection. Such acharyas as Srila Prabhupada, the great acharyas, have that jurisdiction, you could say, the power of attorney on behalf of Krishna to modify and shape principles of devotional service into a form which is applicable and practicable for a particular audience. And Srila Prabhupada explains that before, devotees were supposed to chant many more rounds than 16. 64 was the bare minimum. That was kind of a kindergarten level, 64. And more to be effective. But Prabhupada explains when the Acharya asks Krishna, pleads with him, please Krishna, just accept that level of devotional service that these fortunate souls can perform and make it as effective as the previous standards of devotional service the acharyas or devotees in the past followed. Rupa Goswami in his prayer in I think it's, I may be mistaken, I think it's in Stavamala. Anyway, there's somewhere a prayer is there included by Srila Rupa Goswami who says, Prachina anam bhajanam atulam dushkaram srimatomi. When I remember the principles of devotional service followed by acharyas of the past, I become morose, I become distressed because of the difficulty of the previous acharya, the principles that acharyas followed in the past. Because I'm lazy, I'm very unfortunate, and I cannot do what they did. So Srila Prabhupada, understanding our situation, gave us that bare minimum, and he negotiated with Krishna on our behalf, as he was negotiating with Mukunda, who was negotiating on our behalf with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was negotiating with Krishna on our behalf, asking him to please accept these 16 attentively, nicely chanted rounds, preferably before we do anything else, to as effective, as sufficient to give us the highest benediction that Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, a pure love of Krishna. And these 16 rounds chanted in the morning before doing anything else. It's just like we had a conversation with one devotee recently, and it was about also sadhana. And I gave the example that just like in the morning when we get up, Maharaj explained an optimal routine. We go to the shower, we do our things in the morning, take a bath and brush our teeth. And the purpose of that is, of course, to maintain our health, but also to make us socially acceptable. Because without that, people won't feel like dealing with us, especially if we skip it for a few days in a row. Right? So in the same way, chanting 16 rounds in the morning makes us spiritually acceptable. Then we'll, as one wonderful devotee and preacher, one of the senior-most leaders of our movement, Devamrita Maharaj, once said in his class, if you chant 16 rounds in the morning first thing, before doing anything else, then the entire day becomes filled up with opportunities for service. When we'll see every situation, every person we encounter, every resource that comes our way, even every difficulty that comes to us, as an opportunity to get closer to Krishna and not to become distracted from him. And then, of course, Maharaj emphasized the importance of time. And I'm sorry for speaking in front of Maharaj about him, but I really like doing it. I don't think anyone minds. is that Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj, is such an ideal example of how time should not be wasted, and it is not wasted. Prabhupada said of those 9 anubhavas, 9 symptoms of a person on the level of bhava or ecstatic love for Krishna, the other 8 could be imitated somehow. Avyarta kalatvam is the ability or the desire not to waste any time, kshantim, tolerance, virakta manya shunyata, renunciation, and thinking very little about oneself, or at least being very humble, etc. There is a whole list of them, 9 symptoms. He said, according to one source, that of these 9, 8 can be imitated, but not the first one, not the desire or disinclination of the devotee to waste even a second of time. So we are fortunate to have this example of such devotees, such senior devotees and disciples of Srila Prabhupada like Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj, who show us how precious time is and how pleasurable it is to put it to good use by engaging it in devotional service. When we associate with them, that naturally that renunciation from useless, mundane, or not so helpful things comes to us, because we see the relish, the pleasure they experience in serving Krishna by chanting, by preaching, by dealing with devotees, by helping them, by reading, hearing Srila Prabhupada's lectures, by worshiping the Lord, by traveling, etc. They do it with great relish, and also it helps us understand when we look at them, their example, how to be what Maharaj explained in the very beginning, to be a devotee who does sometimes some other things rather than the other way around, having very little regard for anything which is not related with Krishna. Not that we hate these things. As Lord Kapila Deva says in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Gyana Varagya Yuktena Bhakti Yuktena Chatmana Paripashyatu Dasinam Prakritim Chahata Ujasam. He says, describing a devotee, he says, such a devotee who reaches a mature state of development and devotional service, he or she, they look at other engagements, not with hatred, not with aversion, but with the kind of mature adult attitude, just like all of us in our childhood had our favorite toys, whatever those toys were, maybe teddy bears or some small cars or dolls, whatever, right? But then we grow up, and our parents sometimes carefully keep these toys as a remembrance of our childhood. But when we grow up and come home, visit our parents, and we pull out of a closet that toy, it doesn't create the same, I hope, the same kind of excitement that we used to have when we were children towards them. Somebody says that the sign of old age is when we get the same thrill from a rocking chair as we used to get from a roller coaster. You get a rocking chair and get the same thrill. But no, as adults we do not have the same kind of attitude. It's nice, it's interesting. We have those nice, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not so pleasant remembrances from the childhood, but doesn't excite us. It's there, and we don't hate it, we don't love it, we just remember it with kind of fondness, but that fondness doesn't overwhelm us. In the same way, as Lord Kapila Deva explains, a devotee he is relaxed about the material world. He is not detached. He doesn't think material world deserves too much attention, as Maharaj has just explained. It doesn't deserve so much attention. We have a limited emotional capacity, and that has to be invested in Krishna. And on the first point that Maharaj made about our proper self-identity, I want to conclude with a very memorable story that I personally experienced about one of the richest people of India. It was 1999. Srila Radhanath Maharaj took devotees from the Chaupati temple, Shri Radha Gopinath Mandir in Mumbai, to a yatra, to a Pune yatra it's called. What they do, they book the entire train, or at least 3 or 4 cars in the train, full of devotees, going from Mumbai to Pune. And the entire way, I think about 3 hours or 4 hours, I don't remember how many hours we rode in that train. The devotees in those 4 cars were chanting and dancing and singing and having prasadam. Of course, all of them from all the 4 cars somehow or other managed to squeeze into the one car in which Madana-mohan was, because he was given classes and he was leading kirtan. But we traveled together, rode together in the train. So we arrived at Pune. At that time they didn't have that current temple which was recently opened, and the yatra was about 700 devotees. The yatra was located in a summer home of Krishna Chandra Prabhu, who belongs to the famous business family, the Mafatlals, one of the richest families of India, a dynasty of businessmen. So he had a summer home, not his main home, but his summer home was like 3 or 4 story building with a huge area around, and devotees managed to fit in. Ladies were occupying a separate floor, the men were on another floor, and some devotees, brahmacharis, also slept outdoors in tents. But most of us managed to fit in. And I was so intrigued by who that devotee Krishna Chandra Prabhu was. And we slept, of course, there were no enough beds for everyone. We slept on the floor on mats, straw mats. It was warm and very comfortable, and we slept next to each other, the men. And in the morning, what we found out was that the bathrooms were in shortage, because there were not enough bathrooms for everyone to comfortably and quickly take showers. So we had to stand in queues, in lines, to use the facilities. And sorry for this little bit of intimate detail, but we were standing in queues in our gamchas and whatever to use the facilities in the shower. And I was intrigued by who the owner of that house is. So I asked one devotee, an Indian devotee from Chupati, who is Krishna Chandra Prabhu? Is he here? He's one of the wealthiest people of India. And he went like that. And he whispered into my ear, look around. And I looked around, and behind me was a short, kind of little, how do they say, plump, I mean chubby,
Healthy.
Yeah. Devotee in his, I think at that time he was mid-50 or something like that, wearing glasses, wearing a towel around his waist, standing behind me in queue to use his own shower. That was him. And I remember that he actually slept next to me. In his house, the owner of that house was a very humble servant of all the Vaishnavas, the Vaishnavis who came to use the house that he thought was not his property, but the property of Krishna. Like that. So this is what would probably illustrate and give the idea of what such devotees think about themselves. They think about themselves as devotees, not of Krishna, but devotees of whom? Devotees of devotees, servants of Krishna. And that's his, not a kind of a role well acted. That's what he is. Was Govardhan Parikrama, and Radhanath Maharaj took again his devotees around. Govardhan, devotees from Chupati, and Krishna Chandra Prabhu was among them. And then during one of the classes, when he spoke about humility, he told devotees, look at Krishna Chandra Prabhu. He owns millions and millions of dollars, actually a multi-millionaire in his family, his dynasty. But here he is, sitting with us on the soil of Vrindavan, between cow patties and patches of grass, and he's sitting here in his simple, humble dhoti, listening about Krishna. This is a Vaishnava. So, the secret of success for such devotees, again, like Krishna Chandra Prabhu, we could quote so many examples. Ambarisha Prabhu is another example. What's the word? An heir of the fourth dynasty, one of the heirs. And the secret of their success, both in their spiritual lives and in material lives, is that they always put Krishna first. And the way to put Krishna first, to find that balance in life, is to put devotees of Krishna first. And among the devotees of Krishna, again, there are so many of them, how do you put them all first? There'll be competition. The Shastras explain, and Prabhupada explains, it's the spiritual master, his instructions have to occupy a central position in our lives, and then the balance will be found. And among the instructions of the spiritual master, see, we're zooming in on that point of balance. Prabhupada writes in Caitanya Charitamrita, of all the instructions, all the services given to us by the spiritual master, the most important one is to chant the prescribed number of rounds very attentively. And because from this grows our ability to, stems our ability to serve Krishna in all other ways by carefully and attentively hearing and chanting, then the balance will be very easy to find. So I'm very grateful to His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj for the opportunity to be somewhere close by and observe him in his preaching, his dealing with devotees, his very affectionate and very gentle and respectful attitude towards everyone who he gets in touch with, and his infectious desire to spread the glories of the holy name and the instructions and mission of Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.